And did you want me to take out Gary's name and put something else?
No, it's just in the directors, it was either list the position or put directors plural.
Oh, okay.
And then line 192, is it supposed to say simple bargaining agreement?
That's what they said.
Okay. I think that's it unless, well, oh, I'm sorry, I see line 323 has an Marsden, it's that same.
Yep.
You might need to search and replace because I bet it missed.
Amelia, too, on one line, line 175, it's actually Heselton,
H-E.
so it's, yeah, with an S, H-E-S. And on the same line, it says due to a marked, I think it's a market adjustment. And then again, similar to what Erica mentioned, I think Mr. Heselton's been using this a couple other times.
Anybody else?
I do have, I can't find it right now, but our former secretary sent me an email and she wanted me to share it with the board about some formatting things that she saw, that she thought we should have in our minutes. One of them was something about what time we would get out of non-public, that we needed to have that. There were a couple other things, and once I find it, Amelia, I'm gonna forward it to you, okay? Is that good with everybody? Because Carol was doing our minutes for.
We should have times going in and out.
You do, you
Okay.
normally do, but
Okay.
so, I don't know, but, okay.
There were just a couple of things that she wrote in her email that I cannot find right now, but I will, when I do find it.
Sounds great, thanks.
Anything else? Hearing none, we'll put the minutes to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. No one opposed. Since we don't have any non-public at this time, I don't believe, so we'll move on to the business administrator's report.
My memo is on page 14. These financials were printed as of April 16th, last week. On page 15, we have the revenues breakdown. And we're looking to receive an extra $2,000 in interest income this year. The shortfall of Medicaid revenue, and we've already received the extra revenue from the preschool surplus that we returned of the $19,000. I believe it was 18, and I think that unanticipated includes like other little things, so it's not just the preschool surplus.
Medicaid is down. Is there less kids?
Well, we run every single identified child through the Medicaid system, but we can't know whether they have insurance or not.
I see, okay.
So you're trying to project based on your previous year. If there's less kids on Medicaid, then you're not eligible, and it's a little hard to hit that number really accurately.
It's a guess, in other words.
It is a hypothesis.
It is a guess, okay, good.
And you also, I mean, it could, you could update too, you also had the sale of MSP.
Right.
And so there was a little lag there in reimbursements. The reimbursements are coming in now. So, and they checked in today with us, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they came in to visit and say hi. So it's just hard to tell when they all go into the system and you don't really know who's eligible. So.
Okay. Any question on financials? Two months.
Well, I guess you wanted, on all financials or just the revenues?
Right, that's where I was at.
Oh,
That was just the revenue statement.
the financials is 159, that's what it says.
Yep, 148.
The revenues, I just
Not
wanted to ask,
revenues, but the,
yeah, about the
The
federal
total
child
unexpended.
nutrition line, under the food service,
Mhm.
revenue. Do you want to just explain? what
Yep,
that is?
I expect that we're gonna receive our total lunch sales paid throughout the year, but I think we're gonna see a shortfall in federal child nutrition. That's all. I mean, it's another one of those
Yep.
numbers that we try to figure out where we're going to be next year, but we don't know how many people are filing claims or not,
Okay.
so.
any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. Assistant Superintendent.
Oh,
Students.
wait, I thought that was just a reference, I have a question
Oh,
about
I
the financial statement.
thought we were
Yes,
all
I'm-
set because we were at 148 and we have 2 months to go. I was
Right,
wondering-
no, I just wanted, what I wanted to
trying to
explain
give
to our
Marjorie the
new
reason I-
members,
Okay.
just to give them an idea of what we were talking about at our last meeting, when we were talking about how this coming year's budget's going to be tight because of the health insurance, and I just wanted to share that, to point this out, just to teach.
Good.
If you look at the different lines with the health insurance, we have quite a large balance. It's because last year, we budgeted a certain amount, and now we have, that's where really a lot of our surplus is coming from. Next year, we won't have that as an experience, because we budgeted exactly what we're going to be spending. So that's why it will be a lot tighter.
Only with staff changes.
Right.
Well, there's staff changes and, I did bring up a couple months ago that in your CBA, it actually says if if you have 22 people taking the health insurance buyout, then it goes from $1,000 to $2,000. So that's why your buyout money is over, because you had people making those changes, or people were leaving, taking a family plan and coming, the people replacing them were taking the buyout.
But by taking the buyout, we still save money in the long run.
Yes.
Exactly. Just for a single plan, it would be
Buyouts
probably
are
about
blockbusters.
$8,000, $9,000.
I just have one other point, just for the new members, just to share. On page 8 of the budget, page 23 in the packet, remember when we talked about, this is under the Office of the Principal, that $9,000 the course reimbursement line, and then you see the principal salary, there's $4,500 there, that came from that course reimbursement line. Remember we talked about that?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to point it out, and again, that health insurance center is just so people have an understanding of the budget. It takes so long to learn. And then I guess my last question is the bottom line. I know, Scott, the last time you were here, you mentioned something that you were hiring special ed para.
I'm gonna bring that up later.
Okay, so, but is that included in this budget?
No.
It's not.
There's a couple things that need to talk about, work on.
Okay.
in non-public.
Okay. And then also when we get to it, when we know that we have this surplus, but we're still working on that security grant, and I don't know if you're giving us an update.
I checked last week and nothing's been updated since April 2nd.
Okay, so, and just the amount that we submitted was $65,000, right? So, worst case scenario, we have to pay the whole 65. The best case is we pay 20%, correct?
Why don't you move on to something else and I'll look it up.
Okay, I'm pretty sure
How's
that's
that
correct.
sound?
I just want you to look at that surplus and think of these things, because these are future for this year. We're gonna have to make decisions, so.
Yeah. Bring it up now.
I know you actually may be making some decisions tonight, so with that, I brought your capital reserve fund balances, just in case
Good.
you do need to proceed with that. Your estimated balance right now, because I had your balance at June 30th, but I don't receive another statement until the summer. But we did fund another $25,000 on your June statement that I do have, so I'm estimating right now you have about $320,657 in your building reserve and $201,000 in your special ed.
I have a question.
And don't forget that we're not funding those this year. We did not put those on warrant.
Right. They're going through.
How do we actually access that money?
We have to just take a vote, a simple vote.
But it's like it's in trust, right?
So you
Is
have
that-
trustees of the trust funds at the town that take care of that. So basically what we typically do is we spend the money down first, because then that way I have invoices, I have all of the backups to make up for them, to give them, and then you guys make a vote, and I give them a copy of the minutes, a copy of the invoices, the canceled checks, and I send them a letter saying, we are requesting this much money. And so that way it gets recorded on an invoice on our end, so that way in case there's like a lag between the fiscal years, it still shows up on your 6/30 books.
So it's not asked.
No.
Okay.
And for the most part, I give along to the trustees, so
Yes.
they're very good.
I get along with at least one of them.
Got the answer.
Deb?
I'm
Mr.
done
Rooney,
with-
Mr. Rooney has the answers.
Oh,
So
good,
you're,
okay, thank you.
you're on the wait list
Right.
still.
Mhm.
The original proposal was $64,797.
Mhm.
They will fund $51,837.
So like 80%.
50%.
If we make it.
If we make it, and if these are, I think we probably should have a conversation about this in non-public because of the details of that.
It's secure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do we have a financial question? Are we all set to move on?
Is there something else you want to point out?
Did you want me to put them
No,
in?
no, no. I was reading your face and I thought you were gonna say something else. Thank you. I'm all set.
Now, nothing further, Mr. Jerome.
My report begins on page 29. If you want to immediately flip to page 30, you've got your district determination letter for indicator 11. You're 100% in compliance, again. So that's good news for your initial evaluations. Want to go back to page 29. Of course, it's transition time. So it's preschool to Stratford and the other schools. It's Stratford to Co-Brown. And so everybody's been busy doing that. And we listed out the professional development that the three of us in the office have attended over the last month or so. And then if you look at your census, you gained 2 preschoolers, 2 special ed identified children in Stratford, and lost 2 at CBNA.
In the past month?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah. So what I do, just for the new board members and everybody to understand, is I pull my report from the last month, do my report from this month, and then mark off pluses or minuses on changes in census. So you have those.
Do we do transition meetings from 8th grade to high school? Is that what you were talking about? Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yep, they generally happen here,
Yep.
and they're for the, so what happens when we do the annual reviews? The CBNA will attend, and then the LEA that's going to take over will attend. And then we try to have a pretty seamless transition. I mean, there's always bumps for 9th graders, whether they're identified or not, but definitely those conversations.
Great, thank you.
If we want to go back to the agenda, school board emails. No emails were created for you folks. I need to know whether you'd like us to use them, and then I'll take that information and get it back to who needs it, so.
That was, I think originally my request. I am using the Stratford email. I'm still checking the other one because I know people may still be using that, and that's fine, but I know some board members created their own unique email specific for board business, and rather than doing that, I had requested a school district email.
Okay, so you're a yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes. You're a later?
You can do
Are you gonna
both.
ask for both?
You got it.
Like 4 of them.
Mr. Yes? Yes. Mr. Pat?
I'm gonna ask for both of us.
All 3?
That's good.
Yes, so all 3.
That way I won't miss it,
All right.
because I'm in different
Great.
places.
Scott, can I change my answer to both then? But if we're putting one up on the website, can we just put the Stratford emails on the website?
Yes.
Why do you want both? I'm just curious.
I haven't transitioned yet.
Okay, so it's a personal preference.
Yeah, I mean.
So as far as,
Oh,
like,
I want both because I'm not familiar enough, but I like using my Google Drive for the newsletter minutes and to be able to download anything that's
This
sent to us
is a Google.
electronically.
so-
I haven't played with it yet, so I
Okay.
don't know.
No worries.
So I might change my answer in the future once I catch up to speed.
Got it.
I thought we were talking about more than emails though. Well, I thought we had talked about, if it needs to go on the agenda for the next meeting, we had talked about the Facebook page and that communication. We had talked about the videoing and if the board should be owning that.
Oh, that's the
I
next.
did the
That's all.
Facebook page,
Yeah.
it's all done.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
I'll give you a little update. So, those are the social media policies we looked at
Yeah.
tonight
Okay.
that we'll put on for the board to review and give input next time.
Okay.
And then filming is the next thing on the agenda. Any more questions about the email? And I got publicly used the school email, so we'll have those posted. The public. filming meetings. All right, so here's how it works. So LERPA manages your public access channel. It is free for us to transmit filmed board meetings to them, and they will put it in the loop. It's $1,000 a year if you want the on-demand feature, like you can go home and watch it whenever you want. So you have to do it, it's $1,000. As far as filming the emails, the meetings, I talked to, I did a bunch of other work too that you already know about. We looked at a video conferencing system that would reduce the shatter of papers and cups and bottles and all that stuff with the air conditioning system when it came on. So I've already given you about $950. The other option is I've talked to Mr. Russo. He's waving. And he is willing to, did you say donate the camera or let him?
Well, if you guys want to give me a reimbursement, I certainly won't turn it down,
Okay.
but.
Yeah, we can look at reimbursing him for that camera, and then the only thing that I would have to do is search out like a 30-foot patch cable and then a microphone. And then we could, and I'd also like to look and see if that has a remote that I can order, so we can just turn it on and off at will, like if you go to that problem. Those are the two options I'm sort of looking for you. I don't know, I've only talked to Jim tonight about the microphone, so I haven't priced that out. But that's about where we're at. And then you can have it posted to YouTube and link to the website, and you can send it off to public access too.
If we don't pay the $1,000 for public access, do you only watch it in real time? Is that
No,
what
you
you're
can
saying?
only watch it in the loop.
I'm just, what does that mean?
That means when you flip it through the stations, you might find it.
You know, I don't know how necessary
Oh,
that
it'll
is.
still advertise the times that it's on.
They'll put you in the schedule.
Right.
It's like a TV, it's like,
Okay.
you can only watch Hogan Heroes at 7 o'clock,
Well, now she's on at 7, but okay.
Okay.
Wow.
On two stations.
Here we go. All right. Barrington, the town of Barrington just created a YouTube page, and they're posting their selectmen's meetings on this page. I'm trying to find it for you right now.
I haven't been very successful with finding our stuff on YouTube, is the reason I was asking. So,
This you actually, on their, what they're doing is that you're following it.
I mean, there's not like a link on our that takes you to it. So
Well,
like when
we
you're
could put a
home
link.
searching, you're getting these really old board meetings.
We could put, if we created a YouTube
Jim, do you
page-
put them on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can talk to it.
Okay. Yeah, you can go to YouTube and just type in one string Town of Stratford, and you'll get the entire library. To your point of not having a link, the SAU might be able to put up a link, or maybe Jim Bono can put up a link to that channel. Because in YouTube, it's a designated channel.
I just
So
wanted
it's a
to
Town
do
of
my
Stratford channel that you can just go
School
to.
board meetings for dummies.
Okay, I'm just
Anybody
gonna-
can
I'll
vote.
pass this around. This is just the Barrington one that they just created. And they don't need to pay the $1,000, they're just putting it on YouTube, but they
Right.
create a page, and they just download the videos right on there.
Well, the $1,000 is for on demand. I don't think we need on demand for our meetings.
I think the YouTube, everybody just goes to YouTube, they can read it whenever, watch it whenever they want.
I'm not great at that stuff.
Can I make a recommendation?
Please.
So, I think YouTube's great,
Yeah.
but I also think you probably have some people in town who are more familiar with cable and local access, so doing both isn't going to increase your cost anyway. I also think that we can put a link on the SAU or the Stratford School website, but we can also work with you and put a link on your Facebook page.
Okay.
And that way, you're reaching as much of your constituency as you possibly can by doing both. It's not gonna increase anything. And then we just need to figure out a protocol to make it happen.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so,
That's
so
what everybody
we're gonna do the free one without doing on demand, because on demand YouTube. So just the streaming one is for free, and then on demand is YouTube.
Right.
So, and it's all free.
Right.
There
And
you
then the
go.
links, I think, just
Great,
to
and
help
doing the
people.
links, there you go.
So do you want me to research and buy a microphone? I talked to Mr. Russo briefly about the sound quality because I haven't watched your YouTube. He said sometime, go ahead, do you mind if you?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so as far as this unit can go through and take an external mic, I'm not sure about the remote. I don't think it can take the remote, it doesn't have the IR reader on it.
Yep.
But as far as a microphone, if we set up a little diode mic in the middle, that would cut down and actually give us a whole lot more sound. That unit's probably going to be between $300 and $500 for that microphone and the cable and the stand. Right around there. And I base that off of research that I did for my church about a year ago. So things may have changed a little bit, but for the most part, probably what you're expecting.
I've listened to the videos, and I feel like the sound is fine most of the time. I don't know if we need to spend more money at this point.
Well, we will get in the funds when it comes in June, and if we have excess
Yeah,
that we.
I mean, as an audience member, sometimes this is hard to hear, so I can imagine there are pieces of the video that are hard to hear.
Good.
If I may allow one final
See you standing
interjection,
up
I
for it.
apologize.
No,
But,
no.
I mean, it's prevalent to the conversation. I can tell you from a person who's gone through and edited and converted the videos and put them up, sound quality varies. There are some nights where the board members are boisterous with their voices. There are other times where you get very quiet, you talk amongst yourselves, and we can't hear especially that side of the table. As soon as the HVAC kicks on, or we get something happening out in the hall, it interferes with the sound quality greatly. It would be my suggestion to the board that you do look into some sort of microphone capability.
Okay. We do have some microphones that, there were table microphones that we used to use for meetings in the cafeteria and the gymnasium, so we own microphones. They may not be the correct quality that you'd like, but they are microphones that would give us a louder.
If there's an interface to this machine, if they're too old, there might not be an interface with this
Well,
here.
Let's do what Jim says.
Dr. Young,
Wake up.
do you think you can work with Mr. Bono on getting an appropriate, or getting a price for an appropriate microphone for that? And then we'll come back. on
I'll
the
see what
sound.
quality our microphones
Or
are.
if we have an existing one that will work with modification, like an adapter if needed. Do you
Yeah,
mind- do you mind
I
doing
mean,
that?
we can certainly figure something out.
We'll come
Thank
back
you.
to you.
Yep.
Okay,
All right. What
Thank
else?
you.
What else you have?
that's it.
That's it? Good job. Moving on to the principal's report. Oh, wait a minute. Yep, we are.
Good evening, everybody. Let's see. My report begins on page 32. Just really have a couple of items tonight for you. We're excited about this opportunity to partner a little bit with Google and Google Expeditions, which is a one-day experience that students will be able to participate in. Mrs. Hosnick, our technology teacher, has been seeking out some opportunities to create some STEM opportunities and some tech-embedded opportunities for classroom teachers and students. And she's tried a couple times to have Google Expeditions come in and do some programming for us, and it's been tough to get them because they're busy and they're doing lots of work in a number of schools. But we did finally get a date that would work here in May for Google Expeditions to come in. And essentially what it is, it's an opportunity for kids to virtually visit all kinds of locales or science experiences. For instance, what would it be like if you could actually be on the inside of a tornado and see what is happening? It gives an opportunity to do that through artificial reality. So it's a proprietary app that Google Expeditions provides schools the one-day usage for. There's an associate who will be working directly with Mrs. Hosnick in the technology lab, and she is doing both standalone lessons that she's presenting to kiddos as a part of her tech curriculum, but then she's also integrating with a number of our teachers to do some integrated cross-discipline lessons as well for those classroom teachers who want to do that for the day. So our second grade will be doing, for example, some cross-curriculum work using the Google Expeditions experience to really look at some science concepts. And Mrs. Jordan, our art teacher, I think kids might be able to see the Sistine Chapel or something along those lines as part of what she's doing from an art experience. So it really gets, the engagement for kids is huge. but it also creates real depth for learning or opportunities. So we're gonna give it a try. I think it's May 9th, for a one-day experience, and I just wanna applaud Mrs. Hossack for her persistence at trying to find a time that would work for Google Expeditions to come in. So there's actually a handout here with quite a bit of information on the experience, but I'm really looking forward to going into the classroom and seeing kids and feedback from what kids experience with it, so it's pretty neat. Just an update on the School Safety Joint Loss Management Committee. We met recently, the week here prior to vacation, as a part of our monthly meeting. We have a great team together with fire and police and a whole host of folks that are part of our support personnel at the school. You can see some of the things that we have been looking at. We did a lockdown drill recently with both the fire and police on site as part of a protocol, enhanced protocol that we've been using for that procedure. We learned a lot from that procedure, things that we want to update and change. Mrs. Whitmore was here as well for that, as was Dr. Bianski, to just kind of oversee or see what we were doing for that piece. We discussed that. We're looking at plans for an offsite evacuation coming up this month as a part, again, of our preparation and just with our emergency plan. We are updating all the emergency supplies in the Go kits that are in all of our classrooms, which is very much needed. They were very outdated, and so Mrs. Cunningham, our school nurse in particular, has been awesome in that work. So she's been working really hard at trying to get every one of the kits up and fully updated with new supplies. And then we're also looking at some staff training for emergency response, active shooter kinds of situations. I know that Mr. Rooney has some initiatives that he wants to put forward this summer with our administrative staff on that as well. Mrs. Cunningham recently attended a training that we'd like to offer teachers around trauma situations. So it's called Stop the Bleeding. It's a very short training, but it really is, it's in the event of a truly traumatic situation, which of course we're doing everything we can to ensure that we don't have to face that situation, but it would be a training that would be a part of a trauma response that teachers could have. I think it's about a 45-minute training. It's really simple, really no cost to it. In addition to, again, looking at an active shooter training as well. And I know that's something that we're talking about at the SAU and at the admin level. So the committee has done some great work this year. That's our most recent work. I just wanted to update you so that you knew we were on top of things, and it's really been a very collaborative group this year, working again with our fire and police in particular, who have been really good participants with us in those meetings. So good stuff there. 6th grade return from Mira Vista. Everyone's safe and sound. That's the first check off the box. No one missing, all that good stuff. But in addition, it's just one of the highlights for the 6th grade year, and again, it was this year, for kids to really experience a lot of opportunities to grow beyond the classroom in terms of social and emotional learning, but then also collaboration, memory making, and then really some environmental science-related content that the team at Mira Vista does a great job of year at offering kids. So the feedback was phenomenal as usual. Students, as they came back, pretty tired, but really pretty grateful for the experience. And the same with a number of our teachers. We had a few leaving the building that Friday who were fresh off getting illnesses from the kids probably, so they needed a weekend to recoup a little bit, but it was a really positive experience once again for the 6th grade. Really good job by the team. And also just wanted to highlight, it's not in my report, but we had a Books and Breakfast event here a couple weeks ago that Mrs. Homiak, one of our reading specialists, helped to host and put together. And so we had her classroom, and if you don't know, but her classroom actually it's a full-size classroom, so there's a lot of room in there. She doesn't have the typical desks and chairs that you would have for students. That room was overflowing. We had to go across the hall into Mr. Jordan's classroom. That room got to overflowing. We had to go to the next room, Mrs. Gandu, one of our case managers, and that room was almost overflowing as well. So we had just had a huge response, and a really simple thing, which is moms, dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, caregivers coming in with their kiddos and just reading the book, sitting down, getting a comfy spot, having a cup of coffee or maybe a pastry, and just spending some time reading together. So it was a great event, a lot of fun. And also, our second grade, Mrs. Welch just had an author's event for poetry, where kids, as a part of our writing curriculum, put together a whole portfolio of writing around poetry. They were each using similar genres. And she had a wonderful presentation for parents. Again, that was packed out. Mr. Jordan, our other second grade teacher, has done science spotlights on Fridays. And so he's had a special guest scientist come in each Friday with, full lab coat, the whole 9 yards. Those special scientist guests are parents who come in and help be a part of presenting a science lesson. They do a little prep for it, Mr. Jordan helps them with, and that's also been a big hit. So it's been some really neat community kinds of building pieces that we've had over the last few weeks that I wanted to say thank you to those teachers and just let you know there's some good things happening around that stuff. And that's my report for tonight.
Great, any questions?
Just one, when you said that you hadn't updated the emergency kits, do we have a policy about that? With the emergency kits, do we have a policy?
We have a safety policies, however, I don't know if gold kits are in them. Is it in the, I don't believe it's in the policy, the gold
Okay.
kit part. That's something that the school added years ago for evacuation, to take a
Right.
kit that would be used through, there'd be all, like backpacks within each
Exactly.
room
Yep.
that the teachers just grab in case there's an emergency on the route to evacuation.
And all of those kits had supplies in them.
Right.
They just, when I say updating, for context, it really is updating in the sense that when those were put together, some of the issues that schools are now facing around school-based violence simply weren't prevalent. So we're really updating them with the kinds of supplies that are going to be most needed in some of the, again, unfortunately, in some of the events we've seen recently.
Good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? What is this parents' pledge?
Thank you.
That's the athletic committee,
Yes, thank you.
right? Should we talk about that during committees, or?
Sure. That's
Should
it.
That's
we-
fine. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment that I enjoyed seeing the pictures of Mara Vista. I think they were uploaded,
We were.
it was like in real time.
Mhm.
So it was cool to be at home and be able to see the kids and the teachers and the fun that they were having in real time. So I really appreciate that. It's nice.
Scott, do you have anything to add?
I don't know, but it's fun to see the fun they're having.
Just the person,
Is there personnel?
there is a personnel report.
Hey, Dr. Young.
Student
Thank
council,
you.
I got it, yes.
Okay.
We will be doing that in May.
Yeah.
Yes.
I figured they wouldn't be here tonight, but it's
Yeah.
celebration, but I wouldn't want to miss a chance to focus.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Rooney. Page 34.
Personnel reports on page 34. If we'd like to, we can hold the first item until after we talk in non-public and then come out and do that.
Okay.
And the rest are stipends.
And that's at May 7th, is that right, Dr. Young?
Yes. And those, remember, are coming from Reed
Correct.
for the DC. Well, actually, all of them need the
Okay.
art studio as well.
All right, so all of the stipends that are listed on this personnel report are all being funded through a REAP grant.
Correct.
And we're gonna get the plans for that at some point.
Yes.
So we don't see it in bits and pieces. I'll make a motion to accept the personnel report, April 25th, 2018, of the stipends which are listed, which are being funded by a REAP grant.
So you are making the motion just for the stipends, not for the
Because
whole report?
Exactly.
Correct,
yes.
okay, just want to
Yes.
clarify that from you.
Yes.
I second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor. Thank you. Okay, on to correspondence presentation then. I'm sorry, I was thinking committee, but
I do have one email that we received from the school board email that maybe we can answer during public.
Do you want that in correspondence or presentation?
It's correspondence.
that's correspondence, yeah. I jumped the gun a little bit on that. So this-
Basically, Eric Amazon, who's here, wrote to us and he asked us questions about Title I and Title II grants. I sent him links to the DOE pages that had the information about the grants he asked about. And also, he wanted to know some information about the amount of money that we received from grants, which I sent him that information. He has a lot of questions, and maybe during public comments, we can address those questions. I just gave him pages to read, to see if
Okay.
his questions would be answered there. I forwarded the emails to Eric. No, Eric, Amelia.
All set?
Yeah.
Oh, we got one more thing.
Now that you have a,
Yeah, now that we have a full school board with Kerry joining us tonight, we have a new school board ethics policy. We signed it without a member with a vacant position, so we're gonna re-sign a new one tonight to accept that. As that's going around, we have the enrollment report on page 37 and the back page. Anything, Mr. Rooney, on the high school side, anything happening? We have,
no, I think
you
I
said
know.
2 special ed students?
Yeah, those wouldn't show up in your enrollment report.
Okay. Were they just discharged from special education?
I'm not LEA at Cole Brown right now, so I don't know if they moved or were discharged or.
Any questions about the enrollment report?
Normally, I thought that on the Co-Brown page, we would have the previous month there as well. Am I missing that?
No,
So the-
you've asked for that in the past.
Yeah, because that's how we see the comparison, if we have less students this month.
That's on the page on 39. Isn't that the page?
That is the
Yeah.
page.
I don't,
But that's this
Back.
month.
that's this month. Normally, we used to have one where it was listed, you know, the previous month enrollment.
Yeah, you've asked for a
Yeah.
month
Yeah.
comparison, so
Yes.
that we could have it. Any pluses or minuses would be nice to know. And what grades it in. Okay,
I got that.
you got it? Good. Stratford Community News Calendar,
Has gone in for May,
nice.
and yeah, so the deadline's the 15th, so 15th of May, I put it in for June.
How was it working, the first one?
It was fine, you'll have to tell me after the next meeting, after it gets published, but
Perfect,
it was fine for me.
thank you for doing that. And the committee report at this time, now Deb.
The athletic committee met and they created a parent pledge, and this is a draft copy, which needs to be approved. I do have one question about it, because I wasn't here when we were creating that. That was the meeting I was absent. And that would be comment, or bullet number 3. I don't think it should say or practice. The reason being, as a parent of athletes, if you, and young kids, if you go and maybe your child's like, maybe you notice that their ankle was bothering them or something, that's a concern. So you might say to the coach, how was he during practice today? Was his ankle bothering him? Just so you would, but this sort of makes you feel like you can't ask the question during a practice. And I understand what the issue, why this came about for the games, and I totally agree with that. But a practice normally, I just think that parents need to be able to check, especially middle school kids. I mean, they're young, you know. You want to check to make sure they were injured, if they're okay.
So the one thing I would say, at least what's intended with this bullet point is that it's really in the context, it doesn't say it, but it's implied that it's when you're really upset about a decision the coach has made as opposed to an information seeking question
Right.
about
Right.
a practice or some, or hey, you know,
Right.
just so you know, we won't be at the next practice because we're gonna be, it's intended that this rule or this commitment on this point is intended only when the parent actually is
Upset.
upset about a coach decision or something else and asking whether it be game or practice. So maybe we should just remove game or practice. And just have it read, I will not approach the coach during, well, it already says a game. Or we'll wait for a 24-hour period before communicating any questions or concerns, and I don't know if we have to specify when upset, because it seems like,
And just to give the board some background, those of you who don't know, this really came about because there was an issue where parents may have stepped over the line. I wasn't there, I don't know. But, and it was during or after a game. So to keep that from happening, this came about. And just to teach people, we have to, we set examples for our students, and so just to act appropriately. And I know that one of their committee members has coached, and she said the 24-hour rule has been on her schools. She coaches here, Kristen Zena. She's used that before, and I agree with that. I just think right now everybody understands what this means, but if we're going to keep this for 5, 6 years, at that point it's sort of like, am I not allowed to ask the coach question? So I don't know. I don't know what other
What do you
people
guys
think
think?
about that.
we could just put it just after concerns, period,
Yeah.
right?
Any questions?
I think that still adheres to the intent,
Okay.
but I don't know if you guys have different thoughts on that, but it's fine for me. So if we just remove about a game or practice and
Yeah.
simply have it read, I will not approach the coaches during a game, and will wait for 24-hour period before communicating any questions or concerns, period.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's during a game, so we're making it very clear
Yeah.
that if it's during a game, you
And that's really where these, I mean, at least 10 or almost really every time having competitions in place. That works.
Was the intent of this parent's pledge to become part of our policy document?
I think the intent was to place it in the athletic packet or handbook.
Okay.
Because we have some of the work the athletic committee has done, I think, in presenting that packet, it did have, it had, not a pledge, but it had an agreement that students would make around their participation was a part of that packet. And so, on reflection, we thought it would be good to have a parent or caregiver agreement as well, sort of in the same way, as a part of what we provide.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to keep something like what happened from happening, maybe some attention needs to be brought to the way we need to behave during the game.
Now, I coached for over 20 years for that one point, ref for about 10.
Yeah.
Nothing about referees.
It does say officials, because I was
Does it say
looking for
officials? I
that,
didn't see, oh yeah, the
Sorry,
second
yeah,
one,
right.
okay.
Second bullet point.
Because I was thinking of that.
Yeah,
That's a good piece of it.
yeah, that's a good piece, thank you for putting that in.
Do you need the athlete's name on there? You just have parent signature, but no really way to track which kiddo it goes with?
That's a good point.
That we could
Well, I
have
don't
that.
have different last names now, so it might be harder to
Well,
match
you know,
them
and
up.
Especially if
there's
you
some
can't read.
signatures, you'd never know which
Right.
kiddo
Right.
that went with.
Yeah.
Right.
So add student athlete name, yeah,
I read the signature sometimes, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm so cool.
I'm not clear if we need to vote on this.
No, I don't think we do, it's not
I
going,
just
it's
wanted
not
to-
going into our policy
Okay.
package, it's
Yeah.
something that be,
The
Before
athletic
we-
committee was working on it, but we
Yeah.
just wanted to let the board know,
It's
because
addressed.
it did, there was a situation that occurred, and that, so just to let you know.
And I know Mrs. Lano would like to get a final copy with the
Right.
changes we just described to parents of our softball and baseball kiddos for
Right.
the season. So we're still at the start of the season at this point, so I'll make those changes.
hey, facility committee report. Oh, good.
Show up, put you right to work, Carrie.
Yeah, go ahead. We had, well, let me just give you what is, we had tabled this information last time, after we had voted you in, so that you could give us a bit more information, and then you could break down the scope of the work.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you.
So we want to do the heating system, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, you see the price tag, 151, 250. I met with Gary and Mr. Rooney. Was this week? Was last week?
Last Wednesday.
Yeah, last week. Okay, and you only had the one quote, as you guys know. And his 137 was the same. The other work was, we didn't have the prices back then, but we do now. And, no, they lined this all up for us and everything, and it looks very reasonable to me. So I would recommend that we spend the 151, 250. However, on the tank removal, I'm still getting information. We may be able to defer that for a while if we wanted to. If we wanted to wait another year, because Gary went today for his annual, certification up in Concord, because he has to go every year for that tank. And there's a monthly inspection that he does, and then there's an annual inspection that GapTech, they do. And there's a cost to that. But he was gonna get back to me on when that was. So we may be able to wait until, there's also a 3-year inspection, which is expensive, but if we don't wanna spend that money right now, we could wait a little bit, because once we disconnect the tank, we still have to treat it like it's, if we haven't removed it, we still have to treat it the same way as the fleet.
So it's still to be expected?
Yeah.
Even if didn't someone mention filling it with sand or something?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, the issue with that,
Yeah,
just to jump in, the issue with filling it with sand is they still need to test the soil
Yeah.
underneath the tank. So filling it with sand would be prohibitive for them to do that. So it's actually easier for them to pull, test and fill. And I think Mr. McMahon's correct. You've got a little time here because you're gonna wanna go out to bid for that portion anyway. So you can find out what the best cost is for the tank removal, because that's not included in your heating system bid. And then Gary went today, and then he was gonna ask the question of the state is, can they defer that, for X? So we've got some more information coming back.
Yes, I'll check in with Gary on that, so we can, like I said, we can wait on that. It's not like it's problematic right now, but, this is a state-of-the-art system. I know it's a lot of money, but it's a 30-year system. And he took me back to the boiler room, and here's one that's totally, it's a good time. We're lucky we got through the winter with what we had there, because he's bleeding them every day, and
Same, which is what happened Monday, when we came into the building,
Right.
before it kicked off, and we had to bleed them, get the excess water, I think is what it is. The overflow tank, and he's explained to me a few different times, but it takes time to do that, and then hopefully get 2 or 3 of them kicked back on, but.
if we do this, all our boilers will be the same. But one guy servicing them all, not everything will be piecemeal. And they're proven. They've been out there, the new ones, like the new building, like 7 years now. And it's really proven. You walk in there, everything looks brand
These are
new.
the exact same models?
These are the larger model, but the same make.
Okay.
Same make, yeah, same make, and this TML guy, Gary, really likes them, and so he would be servicing everything.
Do we have room, equipment?
Yeah, they don't take up much room, whereas like the pellet boilers would take up a lot of room. In fact, I didn't work. No. So I recommend this, and I recommend waiting on the tank removal.
And so he would be able to start as soon as the kids get out of school, like at the end of June?
Yeah, you want to get on it this summer.
Do we,
Question before we make a motion,
Did we-
talk about how we're funding that.
well, that would be
Right.
for, money we talked about earlier with Marjorie, with the 320,000, yeah.
Did-
However, what I'm thinking was, that's why I said it over here, is, did this go out to bid? Is this the only person?
Yeah,
that
the
this-
only one. Only one, yeah.
And how many people did,
We were trying to get several.
okay,
Yeah.
that's the part I was questioning.
Yeah.
That's part I was thinking and trying to talk at the same time.
Right. Well, one thing I was thinking of is, because we're not putting any more money into the capital reserve, we, didn't have a warrant article for that this year.
Yeah.
Would we want to fund, say, maybe 125 out of it and take 25 out of our surplus, or 50 out of our surplus? Maybe take 50 out of our surplus and take 100,000 out of our capital reserve? So we're not depleting it too much, because now we're gonna also have this tank removal. And you don't know what else we might have next year, and we're not putting money in it. So if we take 100 out, that brings it down to 225. Let's say it's $25,000 for the tank removal. That will leave us only $200,000 in our capital reserve. So we have the surplus, should we take 50 out, or take 100 out of our?
I think we should take it all out, and I'll tell you the reason why. I think everything is up to speed in the school except for the boilers. I don't know if there's anything else that would be needing attention except possibly a roof leak. That would be the only thing that
Our
could.
septic.
Well, the septic's always a question on everybody's house and
Right.
the school system.
We've talked about a generator in the past,
Yeah.
but that's not so much a deficiency of the building as it is just a
That's a different grant type.
value added kind of item. But I
Right.
think, yes, I think the building generally is.
That would be
Good
something
shape.
to really think about, because frozen pipes are, it hasn't happened, but, well, it happened here, right? But it was unrelated to the generators, but, you're talking less than $13,000 for having 2 generators, one in each boiler room. And they're willing to manually set them up, but, you're not gonna have frozen pipes, which is the bottom line, that's the biggest.
$13,000 for each generator?
No, for both.
For
Total.
both, oh.
Yeah, that's
Look at that
transfer
for
switches and
surplus.
everything.
Yeah, that could be so.
Yeah, we should do that.
Or-
Before next year.
If we have the amount for this tank removal before June, that could be a surplus.
As long as we don't have a large priority list that Gary comes to
Yeah.
us with.
We're talking about generators.
Generators
are
are
the
there.
other
I
item.
read.
We have to talk about some other things with this security.
Yeah.
So for clarity, Marjorie, you said earlier we had over 320.
320.
So if we
This
took,
would
that
cut
would,
in half.
that would cut it in half. I think that's why I'm wondering if we should take something out of our surplus.
Yeah, it's not gonna make a big difference if we don't return much this year, is it?
It's-
Not much left, but.
There's not much, it's not gonna have much of an impact anyway,
No.
because it's a small amount,
Right.
and we're lucky to return 100,000. So,
We may be getting more revenues coming in. Just something. Might get some reimbursements, insurance. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to stay with everybody, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to cut off your conversation. But we would possibly get more reimbursements towards the end of the year for additional funding. As far as that,
Reimbursement.
insurance reimbursements or anything to that effect, we used to get those in the past. There's nothing like that that we could get.
For unanticipated revenue?
Yes.
No, we're not getting
I think anything else, so where we are.
we are where we are,
148, which I keep saying 154, because that's what's on the table.
and we're
148.
going to be using some of that. Well, depends on that security grant,
Yeah.
that's, we'll talk about that in a
Right.
minute. So, I don't know, I think that we should,
Can we put any surplus that you're speaking of back into this capital fund?
So one of the, that's what Scott was just asking me on the
Sorry.
side, he was like, we can take money out, but we can't put money in, and I said, you're absolutely
Okay.
correct.
Right, so you wanna be careful as, so, I'm just trying to.
Oh, go ahead, I know you were, but,
So you wanna be careful if you take any action tonight, if you're considering using some of your surplus, you want to wait to make sure what that surplus is gonna be, like
right,
towards the beginning of June or
Exactly.
somewhere like that. Because if you take it all out, you can't really put,
we know that we can fund it, so could we approve it?
yes.
And then we're not having this work done until
July.
July.
I
And
mean,
it's
sometime
gonna be
in July.
We
a
have
down payment, like a third down.
$47,000, we could approve the $47,000 coming out of capital reserve right now.
Okay, they're not starting it until July?
I'll find out, but
Okay.
Because
Well,
then we can't use
no.
this year's.
Yeah, it's
Right, one of the
June
things
30th.
is
They're
they
gonna
have
start
to
on June
start
30th.
the project before June
on the
30th.
30th, right?
Before the 30th.
Right.
I don't care if they go outside
Right.
and they just put a shovel in the
All
ground.
you have to do is
I
put a
remember that.
shovel, you have to
Remember
have
that.
two things, you have to have your shovel in the ground, and you have to
Shovel
have a
ready.
PO in the tray.
Like our PO and our contract will be done, but the work has to start before June 30th.
So, okay, so we have to, I think that we should accept this proposal, obviously, we have that down, but we can just have the deposit, at least the third, come out of the capital reserve now, and then we can decide about the rest of the funding,
I like that.
once we know.
That works.
Okay. All right. All right.
And we can ask them to start on.
I will get with Peter
Yeah.
and make sure.
I'm sure they're
All right, I'm gonna make a motion to accept the proposal from TML for $151,000, $151,250 for installing and wiring 2 new propane boilers, and all the other demo and everything else that's involved. Also to take $47,000, which is the third of the down payment of $47,000 out of our capital reserve account.
Second.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Carrie, for all your work.
Oh.
Great.
My pleasure.
Hopefully propane prices don't go up.
Hearing no
Actually,
further.
one more thing. Somebody, I think it was Mr. Nettle, figured out if we'd done this a year ago, we would have saved $11,000. So we have potential savings.
Here is the savings,
Yeah.
the fuel costs.
Good.
And any oil left in that tank, we'll get a credit for. They'll pump it up. The oil company will. Little
Carrie,
things,
is there a contract or anything that needs to be signed tonight? From them? I don't have the paperwork that you guys are talking about, because I think it's even
Place for
happened
us
at a
to,
meeting
for somebody to
with
sign the
Sure.
code approval.
Want me to do that? Be right there. That's the chairman.
Usually it's the chair that do it, we sign that.
I just want to make sure we get it tonight, so that way I can send it to them and get it processed as soon as possible.
Good. Okay, we still have a motion on the table for this. All those in favor of accepting TML's proposal, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We'll sign the contracts. And Carrie, thank you again.
Okay, well, just in time.
I have one more thing.
Should I stop signing?
I had a month off, no, you got it.
I'm sure you've been thinking.
He's trying to catch up.
We'll get back.
Go ahead.
I left everybody a thing on Ping 4, which is an alert app that I'm trying. You see that? You need one now?
No, you're good.
Okay.
That would be non-public with security.
Non-public?
Yeah.
Anything doing with security, we'd like to keep it non-public
Yes.
Okay,
at this time,
all right, good. All right.
for the safety of the schools. Any other committee updates at this time?
I'm going to, I don't know if this is really a committee for our school board stuff, but I'm going to the student voice thing next Tuesday night, and then Wednesday night is the new board member thing that we still here doing.
Is that the New Hampshire School Board Association? Excellent, thank you.
Are they giving you the books?
I think we picked the books up.
Oh,
got them.
Was it here last time or at the joint meeting? I can't remember, but yes.
Carrie, actually, Mr. McMahon, did you ever get a book?
Becoming a better school board member.
so, yeah.
Can you check and let me know, because I have one in my trunk if you need.
Yeah, I do have one.
Okay, all right.
What's that
I
about?
wasn't sure we gave one last.
Yes, I did.
There were 2 other committee meetings this week, if you want me to share that.
We have other vendor manifests, we'll sign it.
Okay.
Set future meeting dates, we have a.
Mr. Patrick,
Oh, yes, ma'am, go
I had
ahead.
2 committee meetings.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't-
No,
I
that's
didn't
okay,
hear you.
no worries. I had a management committee meeting
Yep.
with the joint board And there is some discussion going on around the superintendent goals and the joint board goals, keeping them separate. So we're gonna continue working on that and presenting that to the joint board. And then tonight, before we started, we had a policy committee meeting and we reviewed several policies. There are 5 policies. Three of them were a first read, and 2 of them were minor changes. I don't know. Mr. Rooney, if we should.
Yeah.
Bring those in another
Those,
time.
those will go on
Okay.
the next agenda as first reading, and then the board members can ask us questions and grill us.
Okay, so those are just.
When they're first proposed, we always take a motion to post
Okay.
any new policies, so that we post it for anybody's.
So I'll make a motion to post it. No?
No, we have to see them first, so they have to go in next month's packet.
Okay. Okay.
So we get them in our packet, so we can review them before the meeting, so we can look to see if we have questions when we go through each one.
Okay. Those are just the 2 committees.
And then Ms. Logan, if they have questions, we can't answer at the board meeting, then we come back to those questions for second reading. So it gives us a little time.
Okay.
But sometimes at the end of the policies, they'll reference an RSA number,
Yes.
and if we don't get clear definition of what those RSAs mean, they can change the meaning of the policy as we're thinking it would be. In that, we would like definition, we ask the superintendent's office to give us that.
Okay.
That happens. Anything else? Now we'll go on to set future meeting dates, and there's quite a few here. Regular joint board meeting for May 9th. There's a joint board with Co-Brown May 16th. There's a joint board on May 21st, SAU office. We'll move to May 23rd, regular board meeting. June 13th, regular board meeting, June 25th, joint board meeting, and June 27th, for everybody taking notes here, regular school board meeting. So that's what's set up for the next 2 months. Now we're on to other from board members. Are there anything else from other, any board?
And we're sticking with these meetings, which I'm planning on, but the last time, our last meeting, we had said we were gonna look at them again, because that gives us 3 meetings in about 5 days.
Well, what's happens is, with the joint meetings, we were wondering if, the question was, could we have the 2 joint meetings combined at the Co-Brown meeting? And we haven't heard anything back from that.
I think Nottingham
Yeah.
has their regular board meeting.
Yeah, they were saying they have the
Yeah.
regular board meeting.
You had it right there.
We've had our regular board meetings when it's fallen on one of our nights. So Erica, by May 9th, we may have more answers to the.
Okay, no, it's just,
following.
last time you said we were gonna revisit tonight.
So,
And we may, I'm not sure, May 23rd, you have a senior, I have 2 seniors.
Is that graduation night?
Graduation is
The
the
25th,
25th, but then they have,
is baccalaureate.
Baccalaureate.
24th or the
Yep.
23rd.
that's what I'm not sure of.
Is
So
baccalaureate 25th?
I'm not sure of, so that's why I was just bringing up that may be something we may have to look at.
Can you find out for us?
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, May 23rd may be in conflict for some of the board members.
If it is, we'll know by May
So, we'll
9th.
come back and make a recommendation about the 16th, maybe you could send that in. That would be
Perfect. Thank you. Anything else about meetings? Any others from board members at this time? If not, we'll open up to public comments. I'd like to welcome back our past chair, Mr. Monahan, sitting over there, attending the meeting tonight. Brian, welcome back.
Thanks. I do have some questions for the board.
Sure,
Can I-
go right
can
ahead.
I just say
I
one thing
figured that's why you were
first?
here.
Mr. Patrick, can I just say one thing first?
Yeah.
Last time we noticed, members of the public had left before signing in. So if we could just make sure people sign in. And when I've watched the videotape, I've been frustrated at times when I don't know who's speaking, so if people could say their names before they start speaking, just for future reference. Thanks.
So, thank you. Brian Monahan, if you didn't forget the name. So I downloaded the new contract off of the SEU website. And at the first reading, found two blatant mistakes that were supposed to be included based on the fact-finding report and the previous agreements that the board had made with the SEA. To say that I'm frustrated and disappointed in the board is an understatement, since to me it clearly shows that you agreed to this document and signed it without looking at it or checking to make sure it was actually correct. This document encumbers $6.5 million of taxpayers' money, and it's not right. The second half of that, and I don't even know how you fix that now. The first one has to do, and for the minutes, I'll say that Article 11A2, working conditions. The professional employees are expected to arrive at school 30 minutes before it begins, and that it's supposed to state and shall stay 30 minutes after. The word approximately was left in, even though in the fact-finding report, it clearly states that that is supposed to be removed. The one that really frustrated me, because it was a joke for 4 years, is the sick leave policy, which again is missing a word, and it just says after 7 blank, sick leave. And to me, again, that just clearly states nobody on the board read this document before approving it, and it was not read before it was signed. Not even by the SEA. Now, I stated for 4 years on board that I thought that they were incompetent in this kind of procedure, but I was really expecting the board to hold up, especially after everything we went through for 3 or 4 years. To follow on that, I noticed in the minutes that Dr. Gadomski, when he presented it, stated there was a 3-year contract starting with no increase for the pay, as the fact finder mentioned, but it was going to begin on July 1st, 2017. So then I began to wonder how the board is going to handle the fact that contractual language in the document right now, which is binding and legal, states that the district will contribute the following percentages for the local government incentive plan, the healthcare change. Me sitting here as a taxpayer and voter now feel that the school board and the district has been overpaying the healthcare for the teachers for 10 months. And I don't know how you undo that. Another compensation package was for the paraprofessionals not getting reimbursed for weather delays or early releases unless they submitted documentation of performance of an equal number of professional development hours to do so. As far as I know, none of that has ever been presented, and we did have delays and early releases, and I dare say that I'd be surprised if our administration even knew that that was now a condition of work. When the board accepted this without reading it and thinking about it, and yeah, I will state that, Mr. Patrick, I sat in your chair and one of your board members accused me of stalling. There's a reason why we had to clean this up and get it right. And the fact that the board approved it and signed it, along with the SEA, and now all of this questioning is in place, I don't even know where we go. We have a document that's legal and binding, that we could look at all the paraprofessionals and say, you owe us money because you didn't document according to your contract. And we could also look at the SEA, and I look at the board and say, how are you going to undo 10 months of overpayment of healthcare plans? Which, in the fact-finding report that the board continued to state was the document and reasoning why they approved the message. The fact finder clearly states that there was a $20,000 savings to the district by accepting that. So when he got the payment, I mean, the documentation right from the fact finder, it should be noted that changing to new prescription provision will save the district almost $20,000. So I expect the board to figure out how to fix this, to either recoup the money that is now owed to the district based on the legal and binding document signed by both parties, and I dare say the SEA probably has absolutely no idea about this. I can't believe they didn't have their Peter Miller go look at it. That's just my comment to the board, is how disappointed and frustrated I am that the school board touted as trying to fix this and doing everything they could, in my opinion, to make their friends in the SEA happy, completely passed and signed off on a very poor document to the District of Stratford. Thank you.
I don't know if we have any answer for that right now, Brian. We're kind of dumbfounded by some of these things that you said, and we'll be looking into them.
Thank you.
We specifically asked the superintendent
We
if the
did.
TAs were included, and
We did.
he said, yes, it's in the minutes, it's on the tape, and he
It-
said, yes.
if I make another comment, it's also in the minutes that he sent this to every single member, and you folks asked some questions, and it was signed. It's up to the board to withhold this. I agree, there was obviously mistakes made at the SAU, but Mr. McMahon, I will state in public that I hold you, exempt from this. You were not a board member, but you four allowed this to pass through, and that's just not acceptable. And I don't know how you fix it. But if anybody comes legally after this document, I don't know how the board has a leg to stand on. I don't know how the SEA has a leg to stand on if the board goes after the paraprofessionals for recouping the money that they were paid for not allocating work. And Marjorie, I apologize if all of a sudden you have to do a lot of number crunching and figure out exactly what the difference in healthcare is. Because according to this legal and binding document that the SEA signed and agreed to with the Stratford School Board for the District of Stratford, we have been overpaying healthcare for 10 months and probably are still continuing to do so. And I don't know how you fix it.
We'll look into it, Brian, thank you for bringing it
Thank
to
you.
our attention.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Don, go ahead.
Don Clifford. I'm from Tasker Hill Road. We'll do it like that we do at the town. I will, just a brief comment to follow up with Mr. Monahan, is that I thought it was amazing that there was no discussion over the contract, and it was just voted upon and signed. There was absolutely no discussion amongst the new board members or the old board members before that happened. The second thing I want to do tonight is I want to apologize to the board and also to the secretary. Last month, I made a comment about the minutes not being accurate. I went back home and I read those minutes that I had reread or that I had read prior to the meeting. They were from a month before, and they just had similar comments that I had made about hoping to bring things together, and I believed when I was reading those, I was reading the last board's minutes. So I would like to apologize. You know, it's not right to make accusations that are incorrect. The third comment, going back to your discussion about athletic coaches, etc., I coached Little League for, I don't know, like 20 years. I started here at Stratford School, you know, when we stood alone, and then when we joined into Barrington and merged, I went down there. Debbie, your husband, and I coached together on several teams. I don't know that waiting 24 hours is necessarily always the best decision. Having that 24-hour pause could work in some situations, but also you let somebody go home and they're just stewing over it. Where if you could just talk to somebody afterwards and just let the coach explain why if he chooses to, or she chooses to, explain what the decision was and why. Sometimes they're not gonna have that answer for you. But I don't know, that's a tough one to decide on. As a coach, I would rather have somebody come to me and say, hey, why did you do this? Than wait till the next game, because that used to happen. They would show up at the next game and they would be angry. And it's hard to it's hard to win a parent back over. You have to make decisions as a coach all the time, and there's always a hardship somewhere. Coaching is one of the hardest jobs there are. It's like teaching, it's very, very difficult. So just something to think about, and that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Russo?
Jim Russo, Wig Hill. Just to dovetail back into the earlier conversation about video, guys, I'm willing to help you out to go through and make this happen. I believe the public has a right to go through and hear what's taking place, and I believe it's beneficial for the public to see what's taking place. So I'm more than happy to go through and offer up services and time and energy to go through and make that happen. Second part is I've gone through and I'm still analyzing between the old contract, the fact finder report, and the new contract. Not only did I recognize the same same things that Brian recognized, there was a number of other nuances. And I'd like to go through and echo what he said. From the very first time at the district meeting, we had an SEA member immediately wanted to go through and have you guys just rush to the table and sign this thing. And in the process of rushing through it, you've exposed the town legally. That's factual. You can go and look at it. It's a big red flag. to everything that just took place. I really hope you go through and you take it really personally. Thank you.
Jim, would you be interested in taping the joint board meetings?
Yeah, if I have the time. It's gonna come down to time with me. I've talked with, one of the things that I've tried to do is talk with Tony Fallon of the Republican Committee. He's also a Scouts person, about trying to go through and maybe getting a Scout pulled in, or maybe having, you know, some sort of small stipend for an AV person up at Co-Brown to go through and be involved, or maybe a group of them. So there's some ideas that have been floating around that haven't really grabbed traction yet, but I do have a bunch of ideas around that, and more than happy to go through and have additional conversation to make that happen. Because sometimes it's just, I mean, you saw right there with your meeting agenda coming up, you know, 3 meetings in 5 days. It's gonna be a tough call for somebody who works all the time.
And as you can see, we have a few people here, we never have any public at our joint board meetings.
Right.
And so it would be nice to be able to post those meetings on our Facebook page too.
I'm more than happy to help go through and, you know, help make things happen and
Right.
progress that.
Thanks.
Don, go ahead.
Just a thought on the recording. I believe the high school students need community service time towards graduating. You might be able to find somebody up over at Co-Brown that would be willing to do it.
That's been explored.
Yeah, I think the
Okay.
superintendent was supposed to have done that.
Okay.
He reported
Yeah.
that.
He did,
That
yeah.
Headmaster Smith said he did not believe there was anybody who would make the commitment
Okay.
to do more than a single, like to get it into a repeating pattern.
But we could post it on the community service board. I don't know if they did that, to see if anybody else, if anybody will bite at that. You know,
Right.
some kids will, you know, have time over the summer.
Small stipend might go a long way. It's amazing what high school kids will do for $20.
Sure.
Um,
One more thing, I fully intend on trying to be part of these meetings every 2 weeks from now until next year at election time. And if I'm gonna be here and be part of it, I'd like to offer my services, I don't know if you would accept them, for any of your committees that you have. If you need help with something, and I could volunteer some time to help with any of the committees at your choosing. You know, I know it's nothing that would be legal or binding, I wouldn't have a voice in it, but if it worked out to help you with some of the projects.
it doesn't have to be.
We appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything, yes, sir.
Eric Almanzon. So getting back to my questions about the email that I
Yes.
sent to the board, I was just trying to educate myself about the Title I and the Title II grants. I think my understanding was that the Title I grant is given to the town based on students who are struggling in reading, or they don't meet the state standard for reading.
We're
Scott
gonna
would
give
be
that
the
to our
person that would go first.
assistant superintendent.
So your Title I grant does provide reading services and math services, but
Yep.
your allocation is based on your free and reduced lunch rate. It's socioeconomically disadvantaged is one of the
Okay.
served groups. The other served group is students that are homeless.
Yep.
So that's how they figure out what you get. That's at the free and reduced lunch rate that you have right now. If you had a free and reduced lunch rate that crept up over 42%, then you would actually be eligible for school-wide Title I. You're a targeted assistance school right now. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so does that money just go into the general fund, I guess,
No.
or does that go
So-
specifically to?
The allocation is awarded to the school district, and then it's entered into a grant management system.
Uh-huh,
We have to remember that with our federal grants, at least right now, it's about supplementing and not supplanting. So your Title I grant is meant to supplement your general fund, your operating budget.
okay,
But it's not to be used to replace it.
okay, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, yep,
And that could change. There's been some discussion at the federal level about federal flexibility and other things that I haven't seen come through in any
okay.
changes yet.
And my brief question about the Title II was that it looked like it was grant money being offered for teachers who were, I think the words I read were like taking on a mentoring role or,
Well, your Title II is really a professional development grant,
uh-huh,
so it's to enhance the quality of your teaching staff.
yep,
So you can take mentors out of that. You can have a consultant come in and work with your staff on a specific curriculum initiative.
okay,
That's about professional development.
okay.
Um,
So it just, it goes, is that like applied for and then, like proposals are made
No,
for?
they're entitlement grants, so it means that you're entitled to them based on their formulas.
Okay,
So.
oh, okay,
At some point in the spring or summer, depending on the grant, you'll get an allocation from the state. It's all flow-through money, so the money comes into the state and then they allocate it out
yep,
off your October 1 child count. So the money is, this is what it is, and then you write your activities to spend those funds.
okay,
Competitive grants are different. They could be federal, or they could be private, or they could be state. In those, you're submitting a proposal competitively to get chosen.
okay.
So entitlement grants are a bit different.
So both Title I and Title II are entitled.
Title I, Title II, and IDEA, which is a special education grant, are all entitlement
Okay.
grants, and they're all based off a formula that analyzes your demographics.
All right, thank you. I was just trying to get a little
Yeah.
self-education on that, thank you.
That's based on the information we submit, that the SAU submits in October, or in September, the MS-25?
No, it's based off, it's not off the SAU, so what happens is you have an I4C coordinator in your school, and then I4C coordinator puts, well, special ed's different, so let me focus on Title I, the other titles. So you have an October 1 child count, and in that child count, there's certain demographic data that's included. And that is used for a number of different purposes, for your adequacy and everything else, but it's also used to determine your entitlements. Special education is different. So special education is your actual, it's still based off the October 1st count, but it's the number of disabled students you have within your district, and then that is allocated out. So there's a year, sort of a year lag as to what your population is as opposed to what your entitlement is. Like, for instance, special ed, you could have 760 kids on October 1st, and the next October 1st, when you're spending your IDA money, you have 90. So there's a little lag there that you have to consider. Sort of like trying to project Medicaid. You were guessing.
Anything else for public at this time?
Just a real quick question. I played Keno this last weekend, first time. How is that working for us, or is it working for us that we receive any funding from the state towards our kindergarten?
Yeah. The funding will come in the next fiscal year.
Okay,
Your kindergarten money will give you $1,900 per kid. Again, 1,100, I'm sorry. I gotta go back and, there's a lot of money, a lot of numbers. So you'll get $1,100. Right now you get half the adequacy amount per kindergarten student, right? So we'll just guess and say $3,500, just to be simple. You'll get half of that right now. You'll still get half of that, but then you'll get another $1,100 per student on top of that.
will that cover kindergarten? All of these costs, will that cover? Because the governor talked it up that,
No.
you know, he was gonna
No,
fund kindergarten.
So it's a complicated question in that depending on your school size, and the size of your classrooms, your costs are gonna be different. So you may notice if you look through your ADM for the states, in some of your larger school districts, the actual cost per student is relatively low because it's an economy of scale, you know, right? Where Stratford has these tough decisions to make every year about what are the numbers gonna look like, are we gonna have to add a teacher, we're gonna have to move a teacher here, to manage that money, so their ADM is a bit higher. I'm not sure what your ADM is right now, 15, somewhere around 15. Some really small districts up north, their ADM can be upwards of about 23, 24,000, just because you've gotta have, I mean, you can't reduce a staff member unless you lose 10 kids in one grade, right? I mean, you can't, it's hard to do.
Well, that's debatable.
So,
That's debatable.
it is debatable. I said it's hard to do. I didn't say you couldn't do it. But these are tough decisions that they have to make.
Agreed.
So if you would say, full-day kindergarten should cost you about the same as your elementary tuition. Fair to say? So it's that cost minus your adequacy minus your kindergarten cost. So it will not cover the cost. But it certainly will help.
I also noticed that this week there was a legislative comment that came out of Concord, kind of directing kindergarten to be structured around playtime, more playtime.
Yeah, there's a.
And that was kind of an argument that some of us that were against full-time kindergarten, you know, and I was one of those that thought that a full-time kindergarten is too much for a student all day long to have structure at that age. And that's certainly very debatable, very, very debatable. But now if the state's gonna say, well, we want you to have 50% of your time as playtime, at that point, I say we go back to half-day kindergarten and have that playtime happen at a daycare provider or at home. That's something to think about too, because if they're gonna mandate playtime, then we don't necessarily have to do that in this building. It's just something that, for thought. Thank you.
Anything further in public? Okay, would entertain a motion to go into non-public for security reasons, which would be in personnel, that would be A and I.
I move that we go into private session, non-public session for security and personnel A, 91A3 and 91A3I.
Perfect.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Like, why are we all silent here?
8:06, we're now in public session. There were no votes taken during non-public session. Anything else comes before the board at this time?
You're gonna
Right
nominate.
here?
Okay. I'll make a motion on the nomination for a paraprofessional, Ms. Marston.
Chicken out is on the first name.
I did. I don't want to butcher her first name.
I could tell.
Okay.
How do you say the first name?
Eilish.
Eilish, okay.
Eilish Marston, paraprofessional. Do you want me to say the
Say the-
hourly amount? $13.30 per hour.
And is that for the rest of this year?
The
rest
For
of
the
this-
remainder of this school year.
Second.
That was very thorough. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? And I'm gonna, right now, direct the assistant superintendent to contact our attorney to, contact our attorney to look at the language that
Was pointed out.
our past chair had, that was pointed out this evening.
To make sure that all the TAs and the
To make sure,
fact finder.
yeah, and make sure the posted agreement that he had was one that we signed off on, the current one. I thought we were pretty thorough.
Yes. And I don't know if we said this in public or not, that Scott's also going to be checking on the status of our grant to the security.
Something
Anything else?
Is there a reason we do public comments at the end instead of where it traditionally is at the beginning of meetings?
We've done it both ways. We've had it at the beginning and the end. We've had it both. We've had it sometimes just at the beginning, sometimes just at the end.
So if people read the agenda and have comments to make, it's sometimes not helpful for them to make them after we've had the discussion.
Well, what'll happen is if we have somebody that we know that is coming, that will be on the agenda with questions and concerns, then we'll take them right at the beginning and we'll skip the end part, so they don't have to sit around all night waiting to get their turn to talk, but we could do it either way.
Erica did bring up, we did mention at the SAU 44 joint board meeting on Monday, our audit committee needed another member, and we did discuss that Kerry was very interested in being on the audit committee months ago, and he was supposed to be my sort of student or, yeah. Anyway, so, protege. And he would like to be on the committee because we need another person. Erica was wondering if we wanted to open it up again to the community. We did open it up. I posted it everywhere, and I actually called people, tried to find anybody that had some background in, budgeting or finance that would be willing to be on the committee. And at least, we do have, Kerry's gone through a budget, so he's been in the SAU. He has like some background. But I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that. Kerry, is that something you still wanted to do?
Sure, I'd be interested.
Because I don't think we actually gave you any committees at the SAU. I think they were all taken.
Oh, all right.
I think we, yeah,
You can take
there were a couple that different towns had said will fill after.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed we didn't get anybody from the town after all the discussion that has happened publicly about people being frustrated with how the money is managed and frustrated that money's not coming back from the SAU, and here's a perfect opportunity and get no response, and Nottingham and Northwood do have public response, so it's not about people not wanting to do it, it seems to be Stratford specific. So I'm pretty frustrated and disappointed in the town that nobody stepped forward. If we have to fill it, then we'll fill it from within the board. And that's no reflection on you, Carrie. I'm sure you're going to do a fantastic job. It's not that I'm saying you shouldn't be on the committee. I'm just frustrated that nobody from the town stepped forward after all the discussions that have happened.
And I put it
And
on,
wanting more voice.
I put it on the Facebook page for the community. I put it on the Stratford News page. I put it on our school board page. Nobody questioned.
Mr. Clifford didn't come forward on it?
Nobody did, no one. No, so, and I actually even reached out to a few people, and that I thought might have some information,
He
some
offered
background.
tonight.
Yeah, he did offer tonight,
Right.
that's what I was saying. That's fine. All right, anything else for public?
I'll make a motion
Thank
to
you.
adjourn.
I was gonna even ask for anything like that.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I say so.
All those in favor? No discussion.